Good morning, everyone, or good evening, stateside. Yeah, eventually I got the camera to bloody work, so I sort of, yeah, it was teasing me for some damn reason today, being annoying. It's probably because I was, maybe because I was playing a game earlier. Could have been that, I don't know. G'day, Shah. How are you, mate? Norman, good to see you, mate. How are things in tropical land? Leah, how are you? Deborah, always a pleasure. And how are things in lovely Colorado? Lukey, I'll set you a link if you're interested. I know it's a weekday, but it's probably after work, or I don't know. Maybe you're out with work colleagues. Do not know. Michael, how are you, Michael? How is miserable cold Canberra? It's a bit under the weather down here as well, so it's sort of lukewarm. So, but anyway, I'm still pantsless, but it's not that cold. But I'm a Tasmanian after all. We're hardy down here. And you're an animal. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure, mate. I hope you're here to piss on a few people. Steph, how are you? And Darkfield Carnivore, how are you? I'll come back to you, Michael, shortly. HD, always a pleasure, mate. Always a pleasure. And hello from Southeast Pennsylvania, USA. Good to have you here. Kronos 77. Anyway, let's get on with the questions. In the last year, cholesterol has gone 5.5 to 7.9 on carna and have fatty liver. Doctor wants statins, refers me to CAC, but says CT, coronary angiogram, don't plan to get. That's the one that I have to go back and do, but I haven't bothered. The CT, because I did the last one in 2019. I've got 90 from severe glassing in my left lung. It's gone all the way down to 19% back then, and I seem to have more physical capacity now than I had back then. So I think it's resolved. So why put myself under radiation? And all my fibrosis in my heart is gone. So, there's no, they just want, let me just tick the box. Yeah, and irradiate me. Enough. I've had enough CTs and enough of these to last a lifetime. So unless I break something or have to have like an X-ray, I'm forced into it, fine. But, in a pleasurable way, go along. Yeah, I think there's enough evidence of what's happening. Yeah. Well, Michael, you're just recent into the actual carnivore, into the carnivore world. These are pre-existing conditions. You may have, because you are Greek, and so you may have the same genetics that I have, which tends to be, if we don't get enough choline from either eggs or liver or supplementation, we can actually develop very rapidly fatty liver. It's just genetics. Sorry to say, your ancestors would have consumed, if they come from the Peloponnese or they come from the west coast of Greece, they would have consumed more organ meats and they would have had a much higher choline intake, which means that some of the conversion pathways for choline would have been downregulated, which means it's a bit like the Irish with their retinol and their beta-carotene. Same sort of situation. So we're more vulnerable to fatty liver, so we need more choline in our diet. Simple as that. And I'd suspect those are the genetics. Now, you probably are a hyper responder. I'm not. My total cholesterol doesn't go up. my LDL-C sort of fluctuates, but it's in the lower range. But that's due to genetics. Again, the ApoE, you may have one of the ApoE4s, so you're a hyper-responder. So that's all it is. It just means the chylomicron remnants are sucked into your liver much faster, which means you export more VLDL, end up with more LDL-C in your bloodstream. It's just a different transport system. Just think of chylomicrons being the sort of the yellow vehicle, and VLDL being VLDL that shrinks all the way down to LDL being the blue vehicle. I traffic more yellow vehicles, you traffic more blue vehicles. That's all it is. When you actually measure the entire amount, and this is the whole problem with they don't take into consideration the chylomicrons in these sort of measurements and the remnants and stuff like that. So it's you end up getting this skewed, you end up getting with more, and most of them, when they do take into consideration the chylomicrons, they don't know how to interpret them. Interpreting is, the main thing. And it really comes down to understanding that, that it has to do with which vehicles, how many trucks of one type are running around in the body depends on your genetics. So don't even worry about the cholesterol stuff. And if you really want to impress your doctors, you can do the Dave Feldman protocol, where he consumes massive amounts of intake of food plus saturated fats 3 days before 3 or 4 days, I can't remember now. You'd have to go and actually check the cholesterol code, it's called, and check the protocol. And then he goes and actually gives, and what happens is, because you're trafficking so much, your LDL and triglycerides drop production. And so you can deceive the actual test. That people have to do this sort of shit to get their doctors off their back is ridiculous. But at the end of the day, you're in charge of your own body. Tell the doctor, because that's what I do. I tell the doctor what to do. And if he doesn't like it, bad luck. So you need to learn. Even my father's doctor makes sure that he passes things by me now. And he goes, "Is it fine with Harry?" And Dad goes, "Yeah, it's fine with Harry." Yeah. He calls me if he's going to do something, an intervention to my father. And I'll say, "Yep, fine, I agree with that." Or "No, I don't." So I don't take shit from anyone. So Michael, there is just a doctor, and many of them have no nutritional training and just basic physiology training. They're not even physiologists. They're not true scientists. They're just basically, drug pushers. They get trained in surgical techniques. They're good at surgical techniques. That's a practical thing. So they're good at surgical techniques, and they're good at things like, what best drug to use for a specific ailment to keep you going. That's not a solution. So, yeah, I wouldn't really worry. And I'd suspect if you went on a choline supplement, you would actually sort out the fatty liver pretty fast. I think you're doing taurine, but that helps as well. Anyway, sister has iron anemia from poor diet. Well, what do they use in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip? Remember the study that I've actually, in one of my taurine videos on iron, I do cover this, and pretty much taurine actually fixes the problem. She agreed to go to Carnivore. How much liver shellfish should she eat? She can't tolerate the iron supplements her doctor prescribes it. Most people can't. They're not, and also they're unbound, and that is a problem because they're not regulated properly. So you need taurine to regulate all the ions, and So you will basically regulate better the ions with taurine. So once you have obviously a seafood is very high in taurine, so that will provide quite a lot of taurine to regulate. But if she's just going to do muscle meat, because they hang them up and they lose a lot of the fluids and they lose a lot of the taurine, they end up with half the amount or less, very low sometimes, especially if it's aged meat. So it's not like freshly slaughtered or like people will do, tribal people will do. So it's good to hear that she's doing that. A bit of taurine. If she's doing carnivore, she's probably not doing. If she's not doing any blood pressure meds or lithium, then she can do taurine, or she can do a very small dose, like 0.5 gram per meal, and that will regulate her blood pressure, regulate some of her other stuff as well. So it'll sort of regulate a number of things in the body. So, yeah, you're welcome, Michael. Jenny, how are you? Finally got the live. Yeah, it's usually on the weekends you struggle. I know you've got other things that you're actually dealing with. So, yeah, do pass on my regards to your mum, and I hope she's doing better. Yes, Norman. Don't get excited. You'd go pantsless all the time when you're in the tropics. You're at home. I mean, so why not? It's comfortable. Zilis, how are you? Or E-Z, Zealous. Don't know how you want to pronounce it. HD, what are you asking? Are there any peptides that are of interest to you? There are some interesting ones, like depending on ethanol, and it seems that the peptides will be the thing before gene therapy. Look, a lot of the peptides can also be a bit problematic as well, like especially some of the glucagon, the growth hormone releasing ones that are in the gut. So a few people have asked me about them, and I've said, well, they do have some issues and some side effects and stuff like that. I'm not a big fan. And even with BPC 157, which is another one produced in the body protection compound that produced in the stomach, I like that, but also short-term uses, because we don't have enough information about long-term. It does produce new blood vessels and all that. Is that a good thing to basically make that hyperactive, pushing those pathways? So I usually say to people, if you've got an injury or you've got like massive gut dysbiosis, IBS, severe IBS, and in particular Crohn's, things like that, like damage to the actual lining, or you've got damage to the lining of your stomach. You've had H. pylori infections for a very long time, and that's caused issues. Well, that could be a method. You do it for 2 months, you stop it for 3 months, you do it for another 2 months, and you leave it for the next year until you've got another injury. So I'm lukewarm about a lot of them, because usually some of these get upregulated in the body at a certain physiological range, but not a massive range. And so I usually say I will use them when I have to, for specific reasons, because I've got some injury and whatever else, and then I'll use them for those reasons. I won't sort of use them in just arbitrary, just like a regular supplement. I don't think that's a good idea. I just personally don't think we've got enough efficacious evidence to show that is a good idea long term. we don't see any tribal people doing that sort of stuff or whatever. I can see as an intervention, a short-term intervention, as a good idea, because people have got some damage and they're not living a tribal life. They're not living a carnivorous life from birth to death. So, yeah, but I'm lukewarm about people doing these experimentations with a lot of these different peptides. The body produces a certain amount. Just leave it. Don't cause derangements in your endocrine system, your hormonal system, potentially. So we need to be a bit careful how we play around. It's not, oh, here's another supplement. Let me just add that to the list. No, it's not a good idea. G'day, Elizabeth. Taking leucine before meal to anabolic purposes. Look, with the leucine, I like to remember the video that I did. Even in a fasted state, you can actually get protein synthesis. So it's not as if you can't. So there's always going to be stuff, even in a catabolic state, where you're breaking down things, you're clearing out things into the bloodstream. So there's going to be stuff in the system, and as long as you can actually activate mTOR inside the actual muscle cells, you will get some level of protein synthesis in that regard. So but most people usually will take things like taurine 60. If they're a smaller person, 60 minutes before exercise, and it actually protects. It allows you to exercise for longer, protects your muscles, and it regulates the ions better, so you don't lose a lot of ions and dehydrate as it has better management of fluids and the minerals. Then on the other hand, you also take citrulline to get that vasodilation. You get a bit from taurine as well, but you get far more from citrulline. That's about half an hour before. Some people will take creatine half an hour before, then you exercise, and then after, usually with a meal, is if I'm going to take leucine, I'll take it with a meal to sort of amplify that effect. I've still got taurine in my system, slightly inhibiting myostatin, and so then you, with the anabolic activity, with the exercise, and then with the food that's going to come in, you're going to amplify that anabolic effect to build more muscularity, which is what people want when they're doing all this sort of stuff. Anyway, continued question. There are some peptides that supposedly clear senescent cells, repair mitochondria, such as SS31. Interesting stuff. Yeah, they are interesting in that regard. There's thousands and thousands of peptides and polypeptides that are produced in the body that circulate around that do a lot of this sort of stuff. So don't get me wrong, I'm not sort of poo-pooing peptides. I'm just a bit concerned at the moment we don't have enough research to basically be on it continuously. It's a bit like Physitin. I do not recommend Physitin like a long-term use. I usually say do it for 3 days at the beginning of the month in high doses rather than in small doses every day, because it inhibits mTOR and it sort of deranges a number of processes in the body, and we don't want to be doing that. So a quick bang effect, and then you sort of move on. So I'm with these as senolytics, I tend to be a bit lukewarm about constantly taking them. Taurine, you can, even in high doses, seems to be fine with all the research, and it does the same sort of stuff with melatonin to repair mitochondria. So, and can actually upregulate certain pathways also to in terms of the production, the transcription of certain peptides, of certain proteins, basically, structures that can actually help with a healing. I'm lukewarm about, and the biggest problem is also the manufacturers there's a lot of issues with the manufacturers out there. And so unless I'm at the stage where I'm happy with a manufacturer, I'm not going to talk about them. I won't even promote it. So it's not that I'm not investigating these HD. As you know, I've looked at, I've brought to a lot of people's attentions in the past about a lot of these things, but I'm lukewarm about making videos and promoting them hard because I'm not certain. Even though I've used some stuff, I'm not certain. You haven't seen me do a video on BPC 157, have you? No. Even on that, I'm still got question marks, even though I've used it on my dad with his injuries and stuff like that. So I'm, with my channel, I'm careful. What I promote, stuff that I promote, I know that works and works in the specific doses that I give people. A lot of this sort of stuff, there's not enough research. We don't really know enough. And I'm reluctant to basically push things on people that could potentially cause issues or cause and also have certain risks that we're not aware of. So that's the reason why I know a lot of people out there are pushing that, especially in the bro science, the bodybuilding area and all that. They do a lot of that, but that's because these people are just trying to get somewhere. And in many cases, they're very irresponsible in the way they go about it because they're very responsible with their own body and health. I don't operate like that. So, yeah, I need to do more research on that sort of stuff. There is a better way of actually doing. Hopefully I'll get that bloody video out sometime later this week, which will cover some of this sort of stuff and about how to get better autophagy, so to speak. So that's the fasting video that I've been promising and I haven't done yet. Okay. Fox, how are you as well? Yeah, look, on a low carbohydrate diet of any sort, that usually is the first thing that happens. But some people do have certain genetics and they do need to get more choline in their diet. If they're not getting, for whatever reason, then they can have much more greater difficulty in clearing out fat from the liver. It's just one of those things. It's genetic. Sorry. It's a small group of people. I'm one of them. Potentially Michael could be another one. It is what it is, unfortunately. My ancestors consumed organ meats all the time on a regular basis. I mean, the offal shops, I remember as a youngster, in every corner, and people just used to eat quite a bit of liver and stuff like that. So, people like me have certain pathways down regulated, so I need more. It's just the way it is. Yeah, you're welcome. That's fine. That's fine, mate. I understand. So we're all busy. It is a weekday, a work day, so to speak. You got work tomorrow, so you got to get to bed, which is fair enough. Okay, 6 weeks ago, reaction to chili sauce. Chili sauce! How dare you? Hand in your carnivore card. Any indiscretions, severe stomach cramps, crap gas 10 days. Now okay. Only loose stools since then. Mostly carny 53. Yep, 160. Dropped 53 to 48 kilos. Bile probably. Look, yeah, hard to say. Yeah, some people to nightshades, when they get off, it's a bit like, I've had people that have gone to a carnivore diet and then they've tried, they had an underlying salicylate sensitivity, but they didn't know it when they were doing a vegan diet. And now, because they just didn't, with all the other confusion, the brain fog and all that, but once they went on to carnivore, when they came back to salicylates, because they hadn't had salicylates in their system for a very long time, they reacted immediately to the salicylates. And they actually found if you do go and do, those little dots, they put the little dots on to see sensitivity tests that naturopaths do. Well, you can do those things to find out whether you've got to different compounds from different plants any sensitivity. Some people have with lime, so they can actually, their skin can burn from lime if they consume it and they're out in the sun. There's a lot of different sensitivities that people still have out there. So, this may be one of yours, which was masking itself on a regular diet. Now that you're actually away from it, you've desensitized, and now you come back to it. You resensitize in a much more profound way, and you go, oh, look, that shit again. The body goes, yep, fair enough. You're going to sleep. Valley Vida, hope I pronounced it. I'm right. Hello, Harry. What other brand of taurine could I buy? Nature's Life brand isn't on iHerb. I put a link in the channel. There is in the channel page, I put a link. That one isn't available anymore outside the state. I can't remember which state it's produced in, a state in America, and they're not selling it anywhere else. So it's a bit of annoying. So move to this other one. Now that one is on Amazon. There's a link to it that I actually put, and there's a new one as well that I've put a recent link, so you can take a look at the community page and grab it from there, or somebody can throw in the link into the chat for me. Is it normal to develop food sensitivities to plants after doing strict carnivore? What I said earlier. Yeah, it can be for some people that have got pre-existing sensitivities. For instance, for me, it doesn't affect me. A lot of things don't affect me. I come from a Mediterranean background, and so I can eat salicylate foods. I can eat whatever, no sensitivities whatsoever, even if I'm off them for months. So I don't get that at all. So call me lucky, but I've got other things, so MTHFR and a whole lot of other things. So, we've all got our cross to bear, so to speak. Leela, it's just the way it is. Yeah, some people, if you come from Northern Europe, obviously you're going to have sensitivity to plants far more than Southern Europe or coming from the Middle East or areas that are exposed to plants for longer periods of time. It's just, sorry, but it is what it is. You're welcome. My husband is on dialysis. What else besides carnivore, taurine, and leucine? Should he be on? The ultimate thing is to keep it clean. It really is to keep it clean. I also, and this is a bit of a trick, the reason why carnivore actually works, has an advantage, is that it's actually providing additional protein. There's a certain amount that is utilized for protein synthesis. The excess amount can be used as a gluconeogenic precursor for glucose, but also, and that's demand driven, and also some of the other excess can be used by organs to grow. So it's not only muscles that need protein, but organs, or the muscle skeletal structure, but also organs require protein. And so upping the protein will actually grow the kidneys. My father has kidney cancer, which is halved. He's eating more meat now than you can poke a stick at, and doing taurine and all that. I got him another batch of Pfizer as well. And his cancer is halved since the last test we did. But his kidneys have grown as well. Well, actually, we didn't do the test. They did the test because he was in hospital for an injury that, wasn't his fault, being hit by a vehicle. But anyway, and also the previous time that they did a test when he had the the reaction to the fourth jab that I told him not to do, and he wouldn't listen, as they do in that age. And yeah, pretty much Dad has recovered quite a bit, and it's just time. It is really time. It takes time to heal, time to repair in that regard. So I am investigating some of these other peptides that we talked about earlier in terms of kidney repair and healing. And so I'm still investigating them. There's not enough research out there, but I'm actually trying to get some of the Russian research and some research in Asia. So I have to translate that sort of stuff. And yeah, it's a bit of a hassle trying to find things. Sometimes I come across it, I go, that's rubbish. It's not really what I wanted after I've translated it. So yeah, I'm looking. Do ask me again in the future. I may have more information. Obviously, taurine is a very important thing. It will help, and so will leucine. But there may be other things that can accelerate it a bit faster. So yeah, I'm still reluctant to push anything until I'm certain about that it's not going to cause any more problems for people. So I play it safe in the way I go, and I don't want to do any harm. I've never, very rarely, and when I have slipped up with a boron issue, which was one of them, but that wasn't actually, I had told the people to do the right thing to normalize their hormones, but you could actually get an underlying deficiency in potassium or magnesium if you take it for too long at high doses. But I'd actually said to the nurse in the Netherlands to take 12 for the week, then 9, then 6, then down to 3, and stick to 3 for 3 months, and that's it, until to normalize and just the carnivore diet and all that. She continued taking it for quite a few months more at 6 grams, which yeah, created certain issues for her. So the reason why I keep on pounding and reminding people, this is the dose, stick to the dose that I've given you. Don't move outside that dose. I've researched it. I've looked at it. I know exactly what it is. I'm not giving you a dose just out from the rear end, from my rear end. I've looked at it and I've covered it quite clearly in a video or whatever video I'm covering dosages, because I know that this is efficacious and it's not going to cause problem. And I can back myself up. So if somebody calls, or challenges me, or, whether YouTube or anyone challenges me, I can say, well, here's the evidence. I've presented the evidence. This is the reason why I claim that this dose works, because here's the experiment, the mechanistic study that actually shows that it actually has these determined results. So I'm very reluctant otherwise to be pushing things on people. Anyway, Dean, how are you, mate? G'day, Mike. And John, is high copper in the body something we should be worried about? What are your thoughts on vitamin A and possibly toxicity? Well, if you consume excessive amounts of vitamin A, it could become a problem. Usually doesn't. Our livers are quite big and have great storage capacity. One thing about our livers, they can store two things really, really well in large amounts, and that's glucose. And that's been shown, people that have got a certain disease where they can't clear glucose out very well out of their liver just grows bigger and bigger, but it doesn't get sick. So it's good. So it's got a very good glycogen storage capacity. One thing. The other thing that it's got is very good, stable retinol ability to store retinol. And any excess if you've got a good functioning gallbladder, gets excreted out of the gallbladder. So usually if you've got your serum, like vitamin A goes up, usually you'll see like certain types of enzymes, liver enzymes going up. That usually means there's a pre-existing condition. There's a condition that is causing a problem. Copper is also usually excreted. If you're actually consuming a carnivore diet and you're not overly consuming, the body should excrete any excess because, again, some through the kidneys and some and through the bile as well. Manganese, again, through the bile, primarily 90% can be excreted. So it depends on the mineral, which parts of the body it gets excreted. So if those parts are not working properly or not healthy, yes, you could potentially get into toxic levels. That's a potential. It's a bit like iron as well. I'm less concerned about ferritin. People go, no, that's a safe storage. And some people can have very high ferritin and have like infections or be exposed to mold without knowing it, can actually raise their ferritin levels. So a lot of different things, but it's safe. It just means fix that problem and it will get normalized. It's transferritin that I get concerned. So it's the transporter parts that if there are too many, why isn't it being used? What's downstream that's not working properly? So that's where I get more concerned rather than some of this sort of other stuff that people get all upset about, which is usually just pretty much nonsense in that regard. So no, I don't worry about, but I do not recommend people consume more than 10,000 IUs per day. They should try and stick to around. Look, I'll give you an example. There was remember the study? You probably don't know about this because you're probably more recent, but I've actually discussed this on multiple occasions. I've shown people there in 1991 there was a case study that was actually done in a nursing home in the US on an old gentleman that he was 88 years old, outlived both his parents. His mother died at 76. His dad died at 40, had no special genetics. So he was the oldest in his family, still alive. And pretty much the only thing that he had, didn't have any health problems. His only thing that he had was he was a bit depressed. That's because he lost his wife. Understandable. He was lonely. So, but, depressing, and he hadn't given up on life, so to speak. So he wasn't like severely depressed. He just was unhappy. They call it depression. Back then, they called everything. And he pretty much consumed 25 eggs a day on average. That's a lot. That's about, he was getting well over 7,000, because sometimes he was doing up to 30 eggs. Other times he was doing 24 eggs. And they were delivering them, and he would just munch on them all day. They hard-boiled eggs, and he would munch on. He had an addiction to eggs. And he'd been doing that for decades. And they were looking at the cholesterol, because back then in the 90s, it was the big fear of cholesterol. How is this man? He must have no special genetics. His parents didn't live long compared to him. So he was like, this is an anomaly. They were scratching their head. This is pretty much, and they did a case study and they left it at that. They never did a follow-up, which was unfortunate. I would have loved to read the follow-up. But the guy was very robust, lived very well, and was consuming on average about, around about the 7,000 IUs of vitamin A, which is, 3,000 is considered the max. And, it's about, we're talking about, nearly 2.5 times. not a problem whatsoever. I do not encourage people to consume more than 10,000 IUs. Let's put it that way. I tend to consume around 2,000 IUs, from all the foods that I consume. Sometimes it can be a bit lower than that. Sometimes it can be a bit higher than that if I have, like 12 eggs and a few other things. So it depends on what I'm doing. But so I mean, like yesterday I had two omelets type things. So it's really that sort of stuff. So I mean, as long as you're not supplementing, that's the biggest problem where people are doing like 10,000 and my coffee. I forgot my coffee. Damn, it's going cold. So, sorry. Now I choked myself. Fantastic. God almighty. So, flush my face as well. If I die, just call someone. So pretty much, well, that's what happens with plants. I must have reacted to the coffee. Caffeine, yeah. So, yeah, I don't sort of buy the vitamin A toxicity issue. I think that's just crap nonsense. It's overblown. But if you're doing like well over 10,000 IUs continuously, that could become a problem, especially if you've got a lot of underlying issues and all that. So I don't recommend it. I usually say to people, stay below that. I don't recommend people eating organ meats unless they've got genetics for them like I have, so that's another thing. And when you get older, the excretion rate of copper out of the bile can fall slightly. So you have less efficiency, especially with people like us that haven't lived a tribal life to have, things working properly. So I'm always reluctant to say to people, consume these things, even though there have been other people that have consumed much larger amounts and don't seem to have any problems. So I'm not saying that it's going to be a problem for you, but there can be a whole lot of underlying issues that can actually cause these problems of, in terms of storage and clearance, that's the sort of stuff. If you've got good gallbladder function and you haven't come from a veganerized diet, a plant-based diet, then you should, I do use that word rather than the other word, the vegan word. I usually veganerized and that sort of stuff. It's my sort of, way. And it also is to reduce the amount of the propensity of the AI to notice what I'm saying. So it's part of that as well. I've been recently demonetized again and had another strike on the other channel. So yeah, let's say YouTube finds me controversial for a number of reasons. So yeah, that's pretty much it. He also has high blood pressure, diabetes, many blood pressure meds. Well, that can be an issue with, you do realize that taurine lowers blood pressure. And so if those drugs are lowering, you may end up with less blood pressure, which is too low. So you've got to be very careful with taurine. You've got to get the blood pressure meds adjusted if you're putting in taurine, or spread it out in small doses. But do monitor the blood pressure meds, very critical. And then the diabetic meds as well. You've got to monitor them because it does lower blood sugar and it also lowers lactate levels. This is why athletes can actually train for longer, because it lowers the lactate levels and it reduces blood sugar circulation. It sort of really normalizes the thing. But at the same thing, if you're on meds that are lowering blood sugar, you can end up in hypoglycemia. So you've got to be very careful when you're playing with taurine and start at very low doses, like 0.5 gram per meal, and then check the blood pressure. And if it's come down a bit, get the blood pressure meds adjusted before you go to 2 grams. And, and usually I say to people, stick it to 2 grams, especially if somebody's got an underlying condition, which means 2 for each meal, which gives you 6 for the whole day. And that is completely, it's even in you Google, it'll actually tell you up to 6 grams are considered safe. 3 to 6 grams is considered safe. So you can Google it to your doctor and they can't say anything under those sort of circumstances. I do recommend higher doses for people that have got these conditions, but you've got to be very careful with the diabetic medication and the blood pressure medication. If you go into higher doses, you will get better results, but there are risks. You need to understand that, Sarah. There are risks. You've got to be very careful. Better to go slowly and not endanger your husband than go fast. A lot of people are always in a rush. So yeah, be very careful. G'day, Mango. Yes, on a non-regular day. Flight F0000, how are you? Continued otherwise. Never had health problems. This is the first time. Stools, clay, beige, last 3 days. That's a gallbladder issue. That's the sort of colours you get from gallbladder issue. Anyway, Aqua Pumpkin, how are you? Why do some small people eat way more meat than large active people? They may have massive deficiencies and their bodies are saying, I want more. I find it, especially people that have been plant-based for a very long time. I mean, your bones are mineralized collagen. Your connective tissue is collagen. Your muscles are collagen. All these sort of things are collagen. So you've got a lot of protein structures around the body. Also, if you're healing, you need more protein. You need protein. The additional amino acids that are going to be taken up by your body are going to be used to produce new little enzymes and little polypeptides that go around doing things in your body. So that is really important. So focus on I wouldn't, Hello Kitty was in the same boat. She was doing far more plants for far too long. Hello Kitty, how are you? One of my neighbours. Yes. I had things on the weekend, so I had to shift it to one of my flex days, which is today. You home or work? G'day, Jay, the flyboy. And invite wedding buddy. Nutrition to detox estrogen dominance. Choline and taurine will help, and so also calcium D. What is it called? Hold on. Deglutarate. That's what it's called. I'll just drop that in there. It's in the. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, and that obviously keep the diet clean. Also to normalize hormones, you can do the boron. So 12 milligrams for 1 week. 9 milligrams for the second week, 6 milligrams for the 3rd week, and the 4th week, 3 milligrams, and stick to 3 milligrams. That's the equivalent of 2 avocados. 3 milligrams, no more. And you do that right through for 3 months. And that should normalize some of those hormones. Then this supplement here will prevent reabsorption. And your gallbladder is the key thing that actually helps with excreting out the stuff. Now, you need taurine and you need choline to get that to work properly. So, you know, I don't know what your gallbladder is in, what sort of state. You'd have to check. You'd have to do an ultrasound to find out exactly at what state it is. Once you know, then you can proceed from there. So these are all questions, questions. What are my genetics like? So there's a lot of things. Why am I getting anemia? Like the previous person who asked me about the young lady anemia, and I should have mentioned that as well. I'll mention it here. There could be a situation where they're getting a bit too much folate in, and they're actually bleeding through their B12, which is one possibility. Or they're not getting enough folate, or they're getting enough folate, but they're bleeding through the folate for other reasons, for the purpose of methylation, because they've got a methylation problem, like genetics, like I have. Well, there's where you need choline, because choline is interchangeable. See, the methionine cycle will go from methionine to SAMI all the way through. It can to homocysteine, back to one of the arms, which is the folate, the sort of the folate cycle or folate B12 cycle, and they can actually, as a methyl donor, or at the other end, right through, choline can come right through and be converted to betaine, and betaine can convert homocysteine directly, sparing both B12 and folate. So getting enough choline in the diet can be critical to spare folate and B12. And most people, when they supplement with choline, their B12 and folate levels go back to normal, gets sorted completely. So that's for that other person who asked me earlier, just to be complete. But pretty much, it can be like clearing out excess estrogen can also be an MTHFR issue, a methylation issue. So choline can help there, but also can help with improving the bile flow. So together with taurine, they work synergistically by exporting fat out and removing the amount of, so you don't have to, you're exporting more of that cholesterol, fat out of the liver with choline. Well, then you're going to get better emulsification in your gallbladder, and the gallbladder is going to work better. That's why carnivore diet, a species appropriate diet, the organs work better for those reasons, because they get the nutrients that are required to export these things out. So if you want to learn more about choline and sources, eggs are the best source for choline. Per one egg, it's 146.7, I think. I may be wrong. Let me just go down here. I just put it in there. Oops. So that is a link to a channel that has all the different foods. 0.9. I was wrong. 1.46.9. I keep on saying 7 for some bloody reason. Milligrams. Anyway, can't be perfect all the time. So, yeah. So, and that other one, that calcium D-glutarate, that actually prevents that reabsorption and actually clears out. It actually helps clear out estrogen itself as well within the body. So it actually lowers it. Boron also helps. But you can get boron supplements anywhere for 3 milligrams. Get about 3 milligram doses, so you can then adjust your doses. There's plenty of brands out there. They're pretty much all the same. It's a mineral. As long as they just always make sure that it doesn't have too many fillers or crap like that, that it's very little other stuff in supplements. That's usually a better supplement. And I've got a truck doing a backup outside my window. Bloody tastic. That's the biggest problem when you live right next to a clinic. Anyway. Commodore Graham, how are you, mate? Hi, Harry. Trying to figure out whether to bother with the Glynac things. Does the amount of methionine in the carnivore diet render it redundant, or can glutathione be boosted further with Glynac? Yeah, look, there's enough glycine in the actual diet, and enough cysteine in the actual diet for glutathione. For, you need selenium as well. Without selenium, you can take the supplement. Don't have enough selenium, you're not going to produce enough glutathione. It's a key cofactor bottleneck. So eating eggs is a really good way of getting selenium. So combining, as I said, steak and eggs, you should be able to produce endogenously enough glutathione. And as long as you keep the inflammation down, you'll have more than enough to deal with any peroxidation issues inside your body, any oxidative stress or whatever, which will always be minor on a species-appropriate diet. I don't know. He may be hiding. Yeah, that exactly. You were going to ask him about that issue. Yes, the one we discussed in the comment. Yes, he's not around. I don't see him. He's probably at work. Yeah, you'll have to wait next fortnight. Unfortunately, it's the way it goes. Elizabeth, you said that if we take leucine with a meal, we lose losses. Not sure what you're saying there. No, look. I like enhancing protein synthesis, and I like taking leucine with a meal. But I too like to take leucine separately, but in another way, in a different combo, at a lower dosage in a different combo to get more autophagy. I'll explain that in a video that's coming up. So you'll understand how to enhance fasting and get better cleanup, cellular cleanup. Anyway, but can't give too much away. I need people to watch the damn thing. Elizabeth, you understand. So, but with a meal, yes, after you've exercised quite a bit, you need nutrients to basically get those muscles rebuilt bigger and stronger. Hard logic. How are you, mate? Hi, Indy. Hi, Harry. And all just dropped in to say hi. Oh, that's always nice. Am still alive after treatment with the breast cancer. Yeah, well, that's good. I hope you were taking taurine at the time too, because it's a chemoprotective thing and protecting your other healthy cells, and been doing some of the other stuff. So take care. I'm glad you're still around. Let me. Hi H, just received some interesting brain scan news. May I email you? Yeah, go right ahead. HD. Okay, nutrition for quicker hair growth. Well, with me, you see my hair, And I've got I've actually shown you the genetics and past images in a very early one, I think. Anyway, it's a while ago. So I had quite severe alopecia and stuff like that. Well, what's your hair made of? Protein, and also sulfurs combined, for the keratin binding. So what do we need? Things like MSM really help. MSM I've actually stopped because my hair gets too long too quick, and so do my nails. I'm constantly cutting my bloody nails and constantly having to cut my hair. That costs money. So I've stopped using MSM. I've given it to Dad. It just basically just shaves it with the old razor completely off, so he doesn't care if it grows. But he's doing it for his knee and stuff like that. So if you really want to grow thick hair, MSM is really good. Like M for Mary, S for Sam, M for Mary. So that supplement is a really good supplement for that. Taurine also helps. It's as a sulfur amino acid, but MSM is much better for that purpose. Biotin. So eggs are really good because you need protein and highly bioavailable protein, and eggs tend to have a good composition because they do include biotin and a whole lot of other nutrients that are really good for hair. So do eat eggs, and plenty of them. 6 eggs minimum. It's usually what I do every day, nearly. Most of the time, I'm consistent with 6 eggs. Not always. Yeah, so pretty much those sort of things. And you want to lower the inflammation as well, because inflammation and stress and inflammation seem to be the biggest culprits for some people as well. So it's not just the diet, it's also stress and all that. Taurine really helps because it lowers your anxiety levels, it lowers your cortisol levels. So it's really good for that purpose. So taking it in the evening will lower that. You'll get better rest and recuperation. And circadian rhythms, actually your hair grows according, and I don't lose any hair, nothing comes out. See, nothing. So what was I saying again? Circadian rhythms. Circadian rhythms really are very important for hair growth and the cycle, hair cycle and stuff like that. So if you're not sleeping properly, that can affect your hair growth as well. So taking a bit extra taurine at night, and depending on your genetics, I've got a high clearance of caffeine in my system, so I can clear caffeine really fast, 4 times faster. Has to do with these longevity genes, as they call them. Anyway, cleaning out contraindicated compounds like this stuff. Very much contraindicated. Now, getting back to what I was saying, I would do all those supplements and try and clean up my sleep and try and lower my stress levels. So all these sort of things are really important. So nutrients and stress management are the 2 most important things. I can tell you I'm much more relaxed nowadays. Learn also to say no to people, and do it at your time when you're available and you've got spare time to actually commit to others to do things. You'll find that will lower your stress levels as well. Something that I had to learn as well, especially to women, to say no. Anyway, move on before I say too much and get myself into trouble as usual. Dropping bear survivor. Since 80% of my poo is dead cells, have you talked to it? Does the reduced bowel frequency on Carnivore mean that this stuff is rotting away inside because it's not getting removed frequently? No, not at all. And I know that because 2 of my subscribers have got colostomy bags. They've had their colon ripped out. when they were plant-based, that is. And these people claim that pretty much there's very little fecal matter. The only time the fecal matter increases that they get is when they do dairy. They add any plants or any herbs or any spices of any type. So when they're eating just clean steak and eggs, even eggs do add a bit more, but clean, like just steaks, they tend to have very little. So most of that gets absorbed. I don't know what the egg thing is. I'm not sure about that. One claims yes, one claims different. Don't know. Maybe a coincidence and all that. I haven't researched them in a lab to know 100%. I would have thought it would be the other way around, since the bio-utilization of eggs is much higher than meat. So that didn't make sense to me. But anyway, they may have been combining it with something different. They didn't tell me. I don't know. But generally speaking, not an issue whatsoever. I have a bowel movement every day. Now, some people don't, but I consume dairy as well. So I consume quite a bit of dairy because I do have those genetics which predispose me to tachycardia and other things because I can't get enough serum calcium. So I have to eat more calcium. So eating more calcium tends to mean that I'm regular. I have one poo every day without, very rarely. I think in all the period that I've been carnivore, I've probably had 2, maybe 3, where I didn't have it on that day, I had it the next day. So, and the next day it was slightly more than my sort of regular, if you want to go into details. But anyway, slightly bigger. Yes. But no, it's not an issue. If you're also absorbing more, I found that some people, they go, well, I'm eating quite a bit, but I'm not pooing much. And then they're absorbing practically. What happens is some of these, what the body can do is, see, when you're consuming things like fat and glucose or carbs, you tend to raise especially with carbs, you tend to raise your ghrelin slightly. And that actually allows for greater, see, ghrelin is not only the hunger thing, but also determines motility. So it actually can speed up the motility. So are you getting enough? See, that's the other thing. Are you getting enough are these steaks lean and you're not getting enough, for instance, fat? If you're not getting enough fat, well, you're not going to get enough motility. It can slow down slightly. Protein has the ability to slow down. By increasing glucagon-like peptide 1, that actually slows down the gut motility. That's how you can actually absorb over a longer period of time, and there's another 2 peptides inside the actual stomach, which can also slow down with more protein in the stomach. And that's why you can absorb food protein. We're not talking about powders here. Food protein over a longer period, like up to 8 hours. Don't spike your glucose or anything. And you slowly absorb those things over multiple hours. So our ancestors could absorb far more nutrients over a longer period of time. Protein has that effect. If you add more fat, then you start speeding up the gut movement as well. So it does have, there is some hormones, and depending on the composition of the food, it has different hormonal effects inside the gut and affects the speed of the gut. While taurine regulates gut motility, it still needs to be signaled. The cells still need to be signaled, so because all taurine does is, because it affects the pressure, that means the fluids inside the cell, it can actually affect the peristalsis. But you still need the signaling to tell the damn things to do their thing to move the stuff along. So these are the hormone signaling that are coming from, depending on the foods that you're consuming, that have that effect. And also calcium can raise glucagon like peptide 1. And that's why when you have a lot of calcium-rich foods, you can slow down your gut motility. It's not a problem because you're absorbing the stuff. That's to allow the body to absorb the stuff much easier. And that's primarily that happens in the small intestine. It's not so much in the colon. What ends up in the colon, there are other dynamics there that are playing an effect as well, which has to do with the type of gut bacteria you've got. So there's a lot of other things there that are into play. It's a bit more complicated story with the transit time of poo, actual poo, not the food, but when it gets into the gut, it depends on also the type of amino acid profile. So if certain amino acids have not been absorbed, they will end up in the colon. And if they end up in the colon, if there are certain bacteria around, they can actually slow down the process because they want to absorb the nutrients. They want to take these proteins and produce short-chain fatty acids and a few other nutrients for themselves. So that can also, it's complicated to say the least. So don't get really upset. What is constipation? Constipation is when things don't come out for days. Or when they do come out, they come out really hard, like stones. And you can feel it. You can feel the pain. I've been there in the past when I had a severe gallbladder issue that now has been resolved, but back then was causing me a lot of constipation and diarrhea, and I suffered. So believe me, I know exactly what it feels like. And most people don't feel that. It's just basically they're eating either less or more is being absorbed and very little is coming through, and it takes a bit longer. So I wouldn't get too concerned. If the stool's a bit too hard, it probably means you're not eating enough fat. It's usually the case, because if you're coming out regular, like every day, but on occasional, some days it comes out a bit harder, it really, where you see it's starting to clump. It's not a 4, but it's much more clumpier. It's getting to like a 2 or a 1. It's much more clumpier or hard. Well, you're not getting enough fat to lubricate the intestine. So, yeah. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, I've been taking methylene blue for 3 weeks, and it has cleared up my candida on my tongue, and I've had forever. My digestion has improved. Great too. Yep, it does that. It does help with that. A number of people, I know Sarah actually promotes it. She's one of the people that I actually promote and all that. I think for short-term use, methylene blue's fine. Long-term use, I'm a bit cagey about it, whether it's a good idea. But for dealing with some of these things like issues of candida, certain bacterial overgrowth and stuff like that, it has its place. This and a number of other compounds. You said we take leucine with a mil to reduce all the losses of leucine effect. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying take leucine as long as you get more than 2.5, I think it's about 2.53 or something grams per meal, you will get protein synthesis. If you get less than that, you get reduced protein synthesis. I'm not going to say about the other stuff, how far down you have to go. So that's for the video. Stop trying to get stuff out of me, Elizabeth. You're just a musclehead student. So in your case, just have it with your meal. You usually get enough. If you're eating enough meat, you don't need a supplement. But some people just want to take a bit more, depending on certain foods that they may be eating that may be lower in leucine. Yeah, they're under those sort of circumstances. Yeah, like I have 2 meals a day, and I'll have one of my meals will be, a steak of some sort, or it may be fish, or maybe something else, or maybe some seafood or whatever. Could be a lot of things. And then my secondary meal, which is like after about 11ish, when cortisol's the lowest, and I have my sort of first, like a snack meal, if you want to call it that. That's when I usually have a bit of taurine and a bit of leucine. And the reason, like 3 grams of leucine, and I have 2 grams of taurine, and specifically the reason, and this is on a non-exercising day, which I'll have it later on, I have a meal later on, and a big meal, I'll just gorge on that day that I exercise. But that means lifting weights, guys. So pretty much the way I would do it, Elizabeth, is, for things like if you're having like a little snack and you want to use it with yogurt, I use it with my yogurt. I put in my yogurt and have it. Dad uses it in his yogurt, he uses his taurine, puts everything bloody in his yogurt, choline, the whole lot, mixes it all up and has it like that. He actually puts it first. He gets really upset with me. He goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm making your yogurt." This is when I was looking after him. And he goes, "No, you don't do it like that." Okay, God, how do you do it, Dad? He goes, "You put the supplements in first, and then you put a bit of yogurt and you mix it up, and then you combine the rest, and then the flavor's better." I go, "Okay. You're really concerned about the flavor, are you? You're old dog, you sick old dog." So, yeah. So that's the sort of stuff I had to put up as a carer. God, damn old people. Oops. Oh, you're going to hate phones when they play up. Crohn's, no gallbladder, 18 months, 95 to 99 carny, diarrhea on and off. Have been on for past 4 fiber fixes. 6 to 10 grams of taurine for a year. Anything to look into besides ox bile? Yeah, you're probably not getting enough. Forget. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about the glycine. You're probably getting enough choline in the diet. Probably the ox bile. 2 hours after a meal, taking the ox bile level, or if you've had a big meal, 3 hours after the meal, to basically try and reduce. What happens is, if you're not getting enough proteolytic enzymes and the bicarbonates that come out with them from the pancreas, and not enough bile at the same time, which is an alkalinizing, it lowers the it increases the pH and lowers the acidity levels. So if you've got good stomach acidity, this can be a problem. It can create diarrhea in some people because it's coming through. You're not getting enough of the bicarbonates and all that, and as a consequence, what happens is you can't. This is why I get so angry when I hear that the doctors have ripped out their gallbladder and not try to save it, because it is important. People say, "Oh, it's not important." Eventually, you will grow like a bit of a pouch inside the bile duct, and you'll be able to. This will be much easier to do because it'll actually function a bit like a gallbladder, providing some additional bile to lower. And what I believe is happening is the body, and probably by taking for a year the taurine, you've probably improved your stomach acidity. And so, normally you have to fix your gallbladder first and then that, but the problem is you don't have a gallbladder and you're probably not producing sufficient bile to deal with this problem. So yeah, choline does play an important role in bile, and so does taurine. But what can happen is your body then takes in from the stomach the food it hasn't been neutralized sufficiently, and so to protect the lining of the intestine, what the body does is it draws water in. What fiber does, it holds onto water and also creates like a film around. It does reduce the absorption of nutrients and stuff like that, but what it also tends to do is tends to reduce the requirement for drawing in water, and it also has that bulking effect. Now that wouldn't be a problem normally. It's just that basically because of too much acid isn't being neutralized sufficiently, the body is trying to protect the small intestine and the colon by bringing in far more drawing in water to reduce any injury to the digestive tract. That's what's happening. Unfortunately, for some people, this is where this sort of carnivore diarrhea comes from. That's one of the. It also can be a gut microbiome dysbiosis as well that can actually cause that. And fiber sort of masks it, but doesn't hit. So it can be either one or the other. But this is another thing, because I've dealt with people where it's been a gut dysbiosis issue. It's been sorted, not a problem. That was with Necro Kitty. She had that sort of stuff for 2 years, constantly, diarrhea, and then we resolved it completely. But other people have this problem of they're not producing enough pancreatic, bicarbonates together with enough bile. And this is where it can take some time to, and it's really the issue is in the pancreas, that may, from inappropriate diet in the past, have more problems. And taurine plays a big role in healing it, but it also heals the stomach, which is another problem, because then it goes back to normal acidity levels and creates this problem. So it's a bit of a catch-22. You've got to, so sometimes getting ox bile to lower, to put in some of that bicarbonate, you can't put it before, because you still need to have the acidity level to absorb the minerals and the proteins to break them down. So you have to wait for, if you have a really, really big meal, for 3 hours before you take some. If you're basically having just a regular meal, then 2 hours after, so you can actually neutralize, reduce this problem, and then absorb the stuff, because you need the bile salts for better absorption of fat soluble vitamins, fats, a number of minerals and stuff like that. So these are all things. It's, it sucks, I know, having had all these sort of issues. You may be a candidate, and I haven't tried this on anyone yet, hard logic, is the BPC 157. I would recommend that for you. So drop me an email and I'll give you a bit of a run through, and then what few things to do, and I'll cover some of those points, and then you can go away and actually action that. Just try and... Didn't work for you? Okay. Didn't work. It didn't work. Don't bother then. How long did you do it for? Because some people get a complete resolution when they do it. How long did you do it for? 1 month's not going to help. You've got to do it for 2 months. You've got to take 60 for 2 months, then 3 months off, and then another 2 months. Because if you've had Crohn's, you've got a lot of damage through the entire... Remember, your whole digestive tract, from your mouth to your anus, is all collagen. So these collagen structure. If you've got Crohn's, you probably heal your colon, but we're trying to heal a lot of things. Yeah. So you've got a lot of underlying things that are basically being collagen structures that need to be sorted. So do take it for longer. So do order another 2 batches, because I suspect you took the 20 batch one for whatever, for less than a month it would be then. So yeah, and do the other 2 continuously. Stop for 3 months, then do another 2 months, and continue taking the taurine and the choline because they're important. And for now, use the ox bile to deal with sort of reducing the acidity level that's coming into the stomach. Because it'll be interesting to see what happens with the ox bile. You know, if the ox bile doesn't work, then you've got some underlying dysbiosis with some of it, and that's when you have to come back to me, and we'll go through a list of things to do to basically fix the whole gut microbiome. So it's the Reuteri stuff. There's some of the rhamnosus one that actually also helps with the tight junctions. There's a whole lot. There's a specific strain. You have to take a specific brand. You can't take the other ones. They don't work. So yeah, there's all that sort of stuff. It's the one that the naturopaths use, and they don't tell anyone, but I found out. But anyway, it is what it is. Yep. Quick question. Yep. Add on. I wouldn't be worried. No, I wouldn't be worried just because your stools based. The only time I worry about stools is if they come out in that sort of a red color. That means you've got bleeding somewhere inside. But if they a clay beige or whatever, that doesn't worry me. If it's a sort of a dark reddy color, that's really concerning because you've probably got some sort of bleeding inside your gut lining somewhere. It's usually in the colon, so that could be an issue. But otherwise, no, I wouldn't worry about that. Sometimes people they can have a cheat day and they can have dyes, and certain dyes can actually certain colors, certain powdered stuff that people sometimes consume. I don't know why, but they do, and their poo comes out as green. So yeah. Oops. Yep. So northern, pretty much Northern Europe then. So yeah, that explains things. Yes. The one that I mentioned earlier. Plus, don't you remember what I said? Flight F000. I'm investigating things and I don't mention things unless I'm 100% sure. Because people then run away and actually use that information, action it, and I don't like people getting into trouble. Is there any significant nutrient loss with buying meat in bulk and freezing it? Not really. I mean, Jordan, probably in our food supply, probably the biggest one that would lose, if you lose fluids, you lose taurine. That's the biggest problem in the modern thing. If it's freshly slaughtered or stuff like that and you freeze it, you should retain a lot of the fluids and not a problem. So yes, just started kefir grains. Yep, I've got some actually out here. Very interested in the other Lactobacillus strain that would mostly likely be present in Salivarius and Rhamnosus. Rhamnosus is pretty good as well, yeah. The LGG is pretty good one for the tight junctions, which I was talking about earlier, but the specific brand. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what it's called. Oh, look, I'll put something in the comments and I'll pin it after this video because I can't remember off the top of my head. It's pretty much it. I'd have to go back into my, I capture all my strains, the Ruteri ones, all the different brands. That's a Gaia, whatever it's called. So I'll put all the links in there and pin it in the chat after this video. Drop me a line. Or leave a question. And, if you don't mind being public, but if you do mind being a public, just drop me an email and explain to me exactly all your history, if you're on any medication, all sorts of things, because medication can have certain reactions to supplements. So there's a lot of different things, even to certain bacterial strains. So it's complicated. Not something that I could cover here in a quick reply. Should caffeine be totally avoided on days taking taurine? Depending on your genetics. For me, no. For you, maybe. Sorry about the texture drawing. I need to clear that up. So that's what you do when you play with crayons and textures like a little kid. You end up putting all sorts of marks on things. Well, you know that the food industry put a small amount of taurine in a lot of caffeine to amplify the effects, like Red Bull and stuff like that. They've worked it out. If you put an excess amount of taurine, it actually negates that whole effect. But some people can't tolerate too much in one hit of taurine because they don't have the genetics to manage sulfur properly. Now, taurine can sort of slightly help with that. Sorry, choline can to methylate away excess sulfur. So that's another little trick in that regard. But I would avoid combining taurine with caffeine, definitely, especially if you want to have good sleep, because taurine will amplify the effects of caffeine, and you won't get good sleep. Anyway, I notice I get about 6,000 IUs a day. Okay, that's with the. I think it's related to the vitamin A. Different people get different amounts. As long as you're below the 10,000, I'm fine with that. That old geezer was doing for multiple decades 7,000 IUs. Didn't have any problems per day. So I don't buy that. I do have an issue if some person comes to me and says, I've got cirrhosis of the liver, severe fatty liver, cirrhosis of the liver and stuff like that. I would definitely make sure that they're not consuming, a lot of different things, and keep it really strict to just steak, not even eggs, just steak, and taking supplements to, like milk thistle, choline, taurine, things like that. R alpha lipoic acid, the R, not the other type. There's the two types. There's a synthetic, which is the S type, and then you've got the R, which is the one that is the normal one. So R alpha lipoic acid, you take that for about 3 months to 6 months. You don't take it any longer because it's contraindicated for longer, but for that amount of, it's a massive electron donor, so it actually can stabilize tissue, while taurine is actually breaking down the fibrosis and, you know, fixing that sort of side and reducing the oxidative stress and the glycating factors and doing all that sort of fancy stuff. Yeah, so it depends on people where they are. If they've got healthy livers, I got no problems. As long as they stick to, on average, below 10,000 IUs. Equals D. Yes, yes. What can help with diabetic neuropathy? A clean diet, really, a clean diet. I mean, supplemental, obviously, things like taurine will really help, but you may be on, you know, but at the end of the day, you've got to get rid of the stuff that's causing the problem. Some of the B vitamins are also very helpful for this type of neuropathy. And it can take time. Some people seem to recover much better than others. It is a video that I'm making later, early next month. So I don't want to get into too many details. I will cover it more comprehensively then. So do expect a video next month, not this month, September. So it's everybody keeps asking me questions, Michael, about things that I'm about to make videos on. Does orgasm temporarily weaken a man? Could too much affect health? That's why we love you, Michael. That's why we love you in that regard. My obviously thing is, if you're not maintaining a good boner, well, you know, the ultimate trick for that is L-citrulline, a great vasodilator, which is the poor man's Viagra. So 6 to 8 grams of L-citrulline half an hour before hanky-panky. Yes, and don't overdo it, old boy. Don't overdo it. God. Bloody old people can't get their head out of the gutter. Yes, of course I'm at work. Well, somebody has to work today. I need to work hard to buy all sexy meats and seafood. Ah, yes. All her meats and all her seafood is sexy. The only woman that I know in my life that basically gets a hard on from animal foods. I was eating eggs to get choline. I'm glad you were. But I realized they gave me surprise to lose stools pretty consistently. Can be with some people. Without the eggs, things are solid, but I have to go multiple times a day despite being, well, you could consume. How many eggs were you consuming? Were you consuming too many? It can be the sulfur. Some people, the egg sulfur or some of the other can seem to aggravate. There are a couple of bacteria that tend to basically consume some of the stuff. So it was about eating 4. Okay, that's not many. God, I guzzle down massive amounts sometimes, even raw eggs occasionally. Like if I want 12 eggs, I'll do them raw because it's much easier to consume 12 raw eggs than cook them. Don't know how that old man, but he was eating them all day as a snack. So, yeah. Okay, so you do have the sulfur spill. Oh, so you've got the same issue with Bart K. Fuck. Yeah, Bart has the same genetics. he can't handle taurine. He can't handle any sulfur, whether it's of these more, MSM, taurine, egg sulfur, and stuff like that. He tends to react really badly to them. He's one of those people. I've told him to take a bit. He still does take a bit, but he spreads it out, and he takes a bit of, because he can't eat eggs either, so I don't know whether he's taking choline or not, but the MSM will as well. It's, if you can't, choline plays a big role, so you may have to supplement choline in order to deal with the sulfur and spread out the sulfur throughout the day, and spread out the dosage of like 0.5 gram of choline in the morning, 0.5 gram in the middle of the day, 0.5 gram in the evening, or midday to afternoon, 1 gram, and 1 gram. Don't go too high on choline. You definitely don't want to go up to 4 or over. You want to stay, because if you're having some food, you're going to get some choline. So stick to within maximum 3, 2, much better, the sort of levels, and that will actually reduce some of the sulfur issues. It's a bummer. It's something, and this is why people, when they go on a carnivore diet, they've never had eggs, and they've never known that they've got a sulfur sensitivity, and then all of a sudden they consume a carnivore diet and they go, oh, I'm getting all these sort of reactions, because people say, I eat eggs, I don't get any flatulence or anything like that, and I eat heaps of eggs, and other people can have 1 or 2 eggs and they'll get flatulence, and that usually goes, you've got a sulfur sensitivity issue. Jonathan, g'day, Jonathan. How are you? I'm way behind. You should know that. It's normal. Oh, Scotty's here as well. G'day, Scotty, Sandra, Johnny Wong. Oh, there's a few characters here. Co-create, I'm happy. Good to see you all. Dropping Bear Survivor. Yes, you're welcome. Well, you know me, I have to be comprehensive, Jonathan. Sometimes I give away too much, which I'm preparing for some bloody video. Can't help myself. I need to take myself outside and spank myself. The only problem is I'll probably enjoy it. That's the only damn thing. Continue with a problem I've had since I've been giving probiotics a few years ago. I think it's still weak stomach acid and bile sludge. Bile sludge can be I went through that for about a year plus. That was annoying. That was really annoying. I didn't have any stomach issues. It was just a bile sludge issue that I really had, and that was causing me a lot of diarrhea. Yes. So it was annoying, to say the least. And sometimes I was getting good flows, and then you got constipated. It was just back and forth. It was just ridiculous. A year of fun, if you want to call it that. But anyway, but it's, it's the consequences of not being species appropriate and making systems not work properly in our body. Our gallbladder doesn't work properly. Our stomach doesn't work properly. All these things don't work, and we're masking them with stuff that we do, because most people, they're having all these contraindicated foods, refined carbohydrates, they absorb really fast. That doesn't cause any problems, because it just absorbs. It creates problems like increased adipose tissue, fat cells that is, and increase in glycation, things inside the body, not in the gut. And the fiber sort of masks all that and reduces the nutrient uptake, so you're starving for nutrients in your body. But you're sort of a regular slob type in that sort of state, and you don't realize, and you just sort of accept that that's the way life is. A lot of people. It's unfortunate, but we've all lived that. I have, you guys have, so we know what it's like. and all that, and are trying to get our health back to be like those Maasai, like those Hadza, like those tribal people, we realise, there's a lot of things that are deranged in our body, are not working properly. We need to get them to work properly again. Some of us, smooth. I've had a number of people that have just smoothly into carnivore, no issues whatsoever, zero. But there's a small minority of people that really, because they've got pre-existing underlying issues, and they end up on this channel and many other channels asking those sort of questions. So, yeah. So it's sort of, as I said, you may have to lower some of that sort of stuff and get it out of your system, lower the sulfur intake, or take choline to sort of regulate it, or for some time, some period. There can be some bacterial strains also that can actually consume sulfur and actually exacerbate the issue if you've got dysbiosis, pre-existing dysbiosis. So you may need to take something like that Ruteri supplement. If you go into my digestive videos, there is that, and you may need to take that for like 6 months to suppress all these other pathogens that are in your system, to sort of get your gut to work properly. So there's that possibility as well. But you do have things like, so C. diff, yeah, the Ruteri one actually suppresses C. diff. And if you've got that's, re-come into your system, yeah. So yeah, the Ruteri is probably the one that actually is the one that hammers C. diff. So it's in those videos. I've got links to all the supplements. There is a C. diff video. Actually, if you Google C. diff and my name, it'll actually come up. Anybody else want to do it for me, please? Save me having to do it. Why might a dog who has always loved eggs and ate them daily suddenly refuse eggs? Don't know. Don't know. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I really haven't researched dog physiology to really know. I know a few things about dogs and cats, but I'm not an expert. It's not my field. Refuses. I don't know. It's hard to say. I think somebody tried. This is not my information. It's somebody else's. I think they tried on the dog choline supplementation and actually fixed the problem. And then it could go back to eggs. And there was another person who took away eggs for a while, and then the dog went back to them at a later stage. So, yeah, I don't really know. So you can try either one of those. I don't know whether it's going to help or not. If you're trying to get like things, some of the other micronutrients, you can always consider some seafood options or a bit of organ meats, stuff like that, to be able to get some of the nutrients that are in the egg, since the dog isn't consuming them. But no, it's interesting. Don't know. Sandra, can't help you there. Well, I thought that was someone outside my place backing up. No, it was outside my place, right outside because I've got a clinic on the bottom part from where I'm. So it's just day in, day out, they just park on the other side. So, yes, the quiet side is on the other side. And unless Hello Kitty actually pops her head out of the window and screams at me, so she's on the other side. And the word is scream. Yeah, she gets all excited. I don't know why. How to shrink in large prostate naturally? Well, carnivore diet is going to help, but many people may not realise is they may have a severe vitamin D deficiency. Now, the enzymes that regulate, there are certain enzymes that do regulate growth inside the actual prostate and in the not exactly the same cell lines, but similar in the breast tissue of women. And they, if not regulated properly, can actually produce more breast, like growth inside the breast or growth inside the prostate. In particular, the prostate, it can produce far more growth than compared to what it causes in the breast. And these enzymes regulate cell differentiation and proliferation. And the key cofactor for both these is vitamin D. So if your vitamin D levels are too low, you can have the perfect diet, the perfect carny diet. It's not going to make much difference if you can't regulate those enzymes. And a secondary cofactor is vitamin A, retinol. So getting out in the sun and having a couple of eggs is going to help with your prostate in the long run. And keeping it clean. You don't want glycating factors and other factors that are pushing anabolic pathways inside soft tissue. We just want mTOR activating inside the muscles and the bones, but not in areas like prostate and areas like that. And depending on what you're consuming, I'll give you an example. Sugar will actually activate the growth pathways, like even mTOR, in the fat cells, but not in the muscles. But in the muscles, protein, leucine in particular, will activate, mTOR 1 for protein synthesis. Exactly. So it depends on what we eat as well, what sort of anabolism we're encouraging in different tissue types or different parts of the body. Anyway, g'day, Johnny. Harry, if the company claims the taurine is free form, no fillers, and free form contaminants like soy, it should be good. And free from contaminants, yeah, it should be good. Yeah. If it's free form, which is similar to what it is inside the tissue of an animal, it's in a free form, not bound to anything, it should be fine. I am sometimes. Occasionally I drop in to the Zoom. That's the one that I usually periodically I'll put up in the community page, the Zoom. And if I put it up on the community page, I'll definitely be there on that day. It's usually on a Saturday, Australian Eastern Standard Time. And we talk all sorts of shit. And we can get away with everything without the censors attacking us relentlessly like they are currently. Do you have a link? We can look up dosing taurine, citrulline, vitamin D, or other recommended cardio issues. Yep. I'll add in the link. I'll add a couple of things for you. Where do you get these supplements, stuff, dosing? Even for those who want to do hanky-panky with citrulline, and there are a few that do want to do that. Oops, what the hell's doing it? Oh, the tick thing. Yes. My personal belief is that humans didn't have this problem in the past. It's more of a modern thing. And I think that it has more to do with the way we've become we've got poor immune responses in dealing with these sort of things. And our immune systems are not as robust as they used to be. And I think this is the problem where this comes from and all that. I do have an upcoming video to cover ticks. I have covered parasites. There is an entire playlist on parasites that I cover a lot of things, and it does cover a bit of this sort of stuff. I don't want to talk about it now, but I will go into a video covering down the track. I don't know whether it's going to be next month or the month after, in October. I can't remember. So my long list just keeps on getting longer. Oops. G'day, mate. Yes. I've been a bad boy. I've been heavily, severely lashed by my lovely friends at Google. Yes, those people. Extremely lovely people who have a sick sense of humor. I couldn't believe it. Even my first video on the other channel, I wanted to put controversial stuff there. What happens? I get a strike. And I'm just showing the data, official government data in Australia about, Jabba the Hutt and the amount of people with issues with their hearts and other things and dying. How it's only in when C-19 was floating around after it left Wuhan, flew from the Wuhan lab to the rest of the world and started infecting people. And it was primarily in the winter months where we saw the biggest amounts of deaths and incidences. The following year after, yes, our dear friend Jabba the Hutt, the numbers were all year round and quite high in Western Australia. This was Western Australia data. And what did I do? I got severely spanked. And some of my other controversial videos, short videos that I've been putting up, even though they are, the AI allowed me, there were 3 copyright ones. It allowed me and said I can actually also link them to be monetized, and any extra stuff that I make, I actually sent to the creator. And I said, yeah, fine, I did that. And then this is what the AI told me I could do. And then all of a sudden they find that because those videos are quite controversial. Some of them are very controversial. Some of the stuff they say. You remember the stuff that I had on the kids and all this sort of stuff and all that sort of related to that sort of areas, the sort of severe woke stuff. And pretty much they went after me on all those. They go, what a bunch of pack of... And yeah, they did the other strike on the other. I complained, they ignored me as usual. And pretty much I put all those into private so I could actually download them and I'll upload them elsewhere. It's it's been, let's say, a bit of a nightmare dealing with them. You know, they just ignore you pretty much. It's like talking to a brick wall. It's ridiculous. But anyway, what can you do? I did put some legal stuff. I thought, I'll try my luck on the other channel, not this one. I didn't want to put this one at risk. I said, if they take that completely out, okay, that's fine. And I actually said to them that what they were doing is unconscionable, is unfair. These are legalistic terms. You know, in a court of law, if you're unconscionable, that means you're somebody that that your behaviour is beyond what the normal behaviour should be. You know, in the way you're treating another party. And I basically said, well, you know, you're a platform. You're a digital version of a mall. You know, like a mall, which is a physical building that has a lot of small stores that operate out of it. Now, they rent their space. With us, we get a free rental on this platform, which is a digital version of a mall. But that digital version of a mall that we pay via advertising. That's how we get the lifetime contractual rights to basically exist within their mall. Now, they want to tell me as a content creator what I can create and produce and sell to you guys, in a sense. Or, you know, I mean, I could be donating it to you, like if somebody in a mall has, you know, a charity. You know, they could be just providing information or dispensing stuff for free. You know, it's irrelevant what they do. It's their business. They're paying rent and all that. I'm paying through advertising to them. I've got a lifetime agreement to have a channel on their platform, in their mall, their digital mall, to, you know, provide my wares. So I'm not taking it from a freedom of speech argument, because that doesn't really work within the commercial bounds. But I actually told them, I actually said quite clearly that you guys are basically, the way you're behaving is the equivalent if the person who owned the mall was demanding what a store could sell or not, and commercially you're violating my commercial rights to operate freely within your digital mall, and left it at that. Now, they just basically ignored me completely, but now that's evidence. And that's what people need to do within the YouTube environment. They need to do that. We need to attack them not from a freedom of speech. That doesn't work. That's just bullshit. That's just ignorant people that don't understand the law or are getting bad advice. We need to challenge them on a commercial contract law. That means if a contract is unconscionable, that means it's, you know, the duress, or what they're actually pushing on us is way beyond the pale. They are in this sort of murky grey area of law, and potentially a violation of contract law. This is why corporations are better protected than citizens, because of contract law. Well, this is an area where they are quite clearly violating contract law, and they are basically damaging other people's products, businesses, activities, whatever. So, in a sense, it'd be like you know, when they demonetize me, it'd be like the owner of the mall coming down and blocking my door so nobody could actually enter for me to transact with. These are the sort of things. So, you know, it's completely unethical what they're doing. on that sort of level in terms of commercial practice, because they're not producing the content. The content is mine. I produce it. I hold the copyright of this stuff in that regard. And if I'm basically doing something, they could be giving me a warning and saying, look, we want you to take this down. Fine, I'll take it down. But to penalize me and do something like that is just a bit on the nasty side. So we know why they're doing it is because they don't like the content and they want to suppress the content. You know, it'd be like also when they shadow ban or do things like that. That's also illegal. It'd be like the owner inside the mall, who owns the mall, saying, you know, like when you enter the entrance, they have little cards or tell you that on such and such a floor is such and such a business. Well, shadow banning is like removing that, so you don't know that I exist in that building or on their platform. That's shadow banning. It's also illegal. So, yeah. Yes. What can you do? Cellular cleanup nutrients other than lucerne. I'm going to explain it in a video. Hold your horses. I told you I'm going to do a video on it. Why does people keep on asking me questions about things that I'm going to do a video on? Don't you want me to do the video? I have a friend who swears that his inflammation is sorted from years on the Grundy diet. Is there any science to this? No. He can probably just tolerate plants a bit better than others. And remember, you don't really know what people do or what they cheat. Anybody can cheat. I can cheat. Anybody can cheat. Why do you think I don't do what I eat in the day videos? Why don't you think I don't do all that? And I even tell you guys I occasionally cheat and how to cheat safely. You know? Most people out there are not going to tell you that. So I don't waste my time. I don't know, you know, who knows what people are doing. But without research, and remember the Grundy diet is also a low carb diet. It's not a high carbohydrate diet. So one, you're obviously going to have less inflammation on a low carb diet, even one that's focused around having some plants. But you can't do it long term. You know, let's see how he does in about a couple of decades from now in comparison to somebody doing a species appropriate diet. Because a lot of these diets, you know, these high fat, consuming olive oil. So you're getting the energy, olive oil. You're consuming also certain plants that have got less toxins, so that less inflammation compared to a standard diet. But and certain better profile in some of the nutrients compared to a vegan diet, much better. It does include some animal foods, like I think it does eggs and dairy and stuff like that. So you are getting some level. But the problem is you're not getting enough protein on the Grundy diet. And over time you will get protein deficiency. And as you get older, you absorb, you require more protein rather than less. And then you'll have musculoskeletal problems that will start accumulating. So there's always what we call the honeymoon period in the early stages. When we look at the N15 data, we know that the humans in the past were hyper super carnivore. They consumed a lot of animal foods for a very long time in large amounts. So none of these diets have ever been tested, and there is no archaeological evidence for them. And when we go back and we look at diet that is devoid from a lot of animal foods, or a vegetarian diet, like the ancient Egyptian diet, which was a vegetarian diet, what do we see? We find people with a lot of health problems and heart disease and other things like that. This is even before, seed oils or refined sugar exists. This is just glucose, some oils that weren't processed in a refinery, so they didn't have high deuterium or anything like that. They probably had some oxidation, but that was about it. And it was primarily a high carbohydrate diet based on grains. They were bread eaters, pretty much, grain eaters. And they described on their walls of, the sort of symptoms of a heart attack. So we know that, and when we look at the mummies, we find, the pathology. So we know quite clearly that these so-called vegetarian carbohydrate diets end up where they end up. You can find the evidence in the mummies of Egypt. So, fine, compared to the standard diet, yes, it's going to be better, but long term, yeah. It's like vegans, you can actually do it for about close to 5 years after that. It's like fasting forever, especially if you're doing a traditional vegan diet, without any of the processed foods today that they're consuming, like the Beyond Burgers and all these other things that they're consuming, all the processed food. So those people start becoming emaciated, severely emaciated, and lose a lot of bone mass as well, and muscle mass. So no, it's completely a joke. Not a problem, mate. Not a problem. Pavel, how are you, mate? What does Johnny say? Harry cheats with taurine. I wish. That means I cheat every day. I've tried taking molybdenum alongside with choline to deal with excess sulfur from taurine, and it works. Do you have any opinion regarding the safe dose of molybdenum? I've got a video, actually. Go and check it out. Google it. I actually cover this point. Or have you already looked at the video? So I do cover it in the video. It's one of my, I think it was my first video, actually. I think it was actually my first video. I do cover molybdenum dosing and everything else. Go check it out. Anyway, I love Red Bull when it first came out. Yes, they did caffeine and taurine. Yes, and you got a boost and you stayed up awake all night to get to do inappropriate things. Anyway, you're welcome. That was on the eggs. I'm getting there. So I'm getting there. I'll send you a link. If you're around, drop in. Can't help myself. I can't help myself. You should know that. You know me how many years now? Fair enough. Yes, yes, yes. The Ruteri stuff. Do check that out. Oh. I suspect that's that video that we were talking about. Thanks, Scotty. It wants, oops, stop. Yeah, what is it doing? Weird one from me. Is it better to include some herbs and spices to avoid deleterious acute effects of their consumption down the track? I know never having them is ideal. Look, I actually do consume some, like rosemary, black pepper, rosemary, and oregano, or oregano, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Occasionally, in some of my, not all my meals, but in some, you know, it's just the taste. And I've grown up on these things. But even when I've actually deliberately pulled them out of mine, I'm not a very useful person for that, because my ancestry comes from the Mediterranean, and so we're exposed to plants much earlier than most other Europeans. So it seems genetically I don't get affected. Even when I take them out completely, I can take them out. Once, this was a while back, I took them out for a year, the whole lot, not a spice in sight. And then I reintroduced some, no effect whatsoever. So I'm not a good candidate. Some people, probably people, Northern Europeans, or people that come from societies that had less exposure to plants through the wintry months and stuff like that, maybe they are a bit more sensitive. So it sucks. Genetics, all these sort of factors. The thing is, I always say to people, play around, see what your body can tolerate, see what your body can't tolerate. And if it can't tolerate, it should be an indication that I'm not very well adapted. So people sometimes, because I know one lady, she's from Ireland, and she wanted to use for certain dishes and certain stuff, like coconut oil. And she realized that after having not used it for some time, she actually got a salicylate reaction. She was salicylate sensitive, and coconut's very high in salicylate. For me, it doesn't affect me at all. So there's that sort of side of things as well. So I say to people, tell me your genetics, tell me your background. Leonel, good to have you here. And g'day, Tero, and you're welcome. Nothing lost. See how it works. Was finishing my dinner. A grilled steak sounds good with eggs on top and butter and garlic. Actually, I got some garlic from Dad. He grows his own. He grows some herbal tea and all sorts of things. So you're welcome. Any idea what causes eczema like skin outbreaks, scalp for after 2 years? Oxalate, yeah, potentially oxalate dumping. There are some other important nutrients as well. If you're not getting enough, if your vitamin D status isn't very good and you're not getting enough, vitamin D, your retinol isn't very good, because when in your skin eczema and stuff like that, let's say it's oxalate or some other thing that's actually causing it, like an exposure to something in your environment, potentially. I don't know. where you live or what you could be exposed or whether you've checked. The body can react, especially when you make dietary changes. There's a lot of things like that, but 3 years, unlikely. It sounds more like an oxalate issue. And I've covered that in a video recently. Go and check it out. B6 is something that gets depleted. And if you've got a methylation issue and you're depleting that, then you can't deal with some of the inflammation as well. So there's a whole, it's multifactorial or faceted what can actually, and things that are required. Also, the enzymes that do generate these effects on the skin are the matrix metalloproteinase 9 and 2. They are regulated by retinol primarily, and vitamin D is a secondary cofactor in the skin. So if they're being overexpressed and causing eczema, stuff like that, due to the oxalate, you can actually consume a bit more, try and get a bit more eggs in it and stuff like that. Maybe 5,000 IUs of vitamin D, or get out in the sun, get your vitamin D levels up, and that should improve the regulation of those enzymes to lower the amount of inflammation in your skin. Other things like taking nicotinamide, like B3, can really help as well with improving the hydration and holding on to water in the skin. So you basically have better hydration, which reduces some of these effects as well. Some of that inflammation can sort of damp it down a bit and improve the energy production within the actual skin cells to be able to clear these things out a bit better in that regard. Yeah, people dump differently. I usually have kidney stones. When I was doing a lot of plants, spinach and stuff like that, and I end up with a lot of kidney stones. I actually end up having something like within 5 years, 4 cases of kidney stones, and I had to have twice an operation in the hospital to deal with them, because one got jammed inside the kidney at the base of it, and was causing a lot of inflammation and a lot of pressure in the kidney, had to be removed. And the other one came through the duct and was at the top, close to the top of the bladder, and had like a hook, and it just had jammed and wouldn't move. And they had to laser that to clear it out. So, and the other one they had to also laser because it was too close to the duct. They couldn't use, if it was inside the actual kidney itself, and then you can use the ultrasound type, to sort of bust it up. But they can't do it if it's close to the duct because it's too sensitive. And, so yeah, fun and games. So people react differently. Some will break out in their skin all over because of oxalates. Yeah, it sucks, I know. Yes, data and truth. Yes. They definitely don't want us telling people about certain things. One thing, you're still here, Jonathan. Get to bed, young man. just kidding. Thanks for being here, mate. Pass on my regards to Sophie as well and the kids. One thing I wondered, if you're perceptive on bone broth and its beneficial purposes, as I couldn't find a video of yours about it, I'd have made a video or even really heard you talk about it much at all. Oh, look, I have made bone broths in the past. I can't be bothered nowadays making them. I don't think humans were out there making bone broths and all that. Bone broths became actually more popular in the grain feeding days because people were getting undernourished from animal foods, and so they had to get anything they could from anything, and that's where bone broths and all these things came in. But if you're eating a carnivorous diet, the amount of cofactors for a lot of enzymes are reduced compared to a carbohydrate-rich diet. So does it have value? Not really. I can't see the hassle or not. Occasionally I have made it, and I usually use it as a stock, and Dad loves making bone broth and combining it with eggs and stuff like that, like my sister does as well. And I've done it a couple of times myself, but where you beat the eggs, you bring them to the boil, you put you take it off after it's your bone broth's cooked, take it off and put it on your table so it's not still cooking. You move a couple of spoonfuls of the warm or the hot, or the temperature that the broth is, into the actual egg, and mix it in to bring it to the same temperature, and then combine it so it doesn't clump up. Then you stir it in and it becomes sort of an eggy type soup. So you could do that, things like that. But I don't. If you're getting enough, you're eating enough animal foods, you're probably getting more than enough. Remember, bones are mineralized collagen. And so what's collagen made of? Amino acids, protein. The body will take the amino acids once it's broken them down in the stomach. You'll absorb it primarily from the middle part of the small intestine. They'll come in small amounts. What I discussed earlier about the different types of hormones and peptides that are inside the gut, the stomach, that control the rate that these come through, so you can absorb them at a normal rate, and then they'll go through and they'll provide for the protein synthesis purposes and stuff like that, or any other purposes to build other tissue around the body. So I don't see that I need glycine, I need bone broth, you're getting it from the meat, and then the enzymes will take those aminos and then build new things. A whole lot of machinery in the body that build, construct, repair, taking these things. So you don't have to, probably the only thing that you would get is probably the trace minerals, and that can be a good thing. So it can be useful. Or you can have alpine water, which has got trace minerals. And I usually encourage people in the early stages, if they've come off a plant-based diet and they've got a lot of mineral deficiencies, that bone broth would be a good idea. Not so much for the proteins or the so-called glycine and all that sort of stuff that everybody gets wound up about, but more about the minerals. And even a colloidal mineral to try and get more minerals in that these people are very depleted in, because the plants are pretty much devoid of a lot of this sort of stuff. Yes, they lovely people. How dare you say anything bad about them? Lovely people. I wish. And we'll get to the next question. And you're welcome, Jonathan and Johnny. That's about tonight. And have you ever heard of the last part of the digestion, when food goes through the colon, actually triggering crazy heart arrhythmias, faster heart rates, or dizziness? If so, your insights? No, I haven't actually. No, I have not heard of this. Nobody's ever asked me this question whatsoever. The only thing I could speculate, this is just pure speculation on my part, is I have heard that some people do oxalate dumping through the rear end. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that, which is probably makes more sense to me, is there are certain bacteria, and those bacteria tend to consume certain. So let's say you've got poor absorption of protein. So for whatever reason, you're not absorbing protein properly because you've got some, maybe the small intestine has got some damage or whatever, you've got malabsorption issues, and it ends up in the colon. Certain bacteria, when there is a certain excess amount of sulfur amino acids, could potentially cause some of these issues. And then, especially if you've got a bit of overgrowth as well, and then via the vagus nerve generate a certain hyperactivity or the anxiety levels or whatever. And that could make sense about the dizziness, the fast heart rate, the arrhythmias and all that. I suspect it's something to do with the vagus nerve interaction with certain bacteria and something happening that shouldn't be happening in the gut, is if I'm speculating, but without really knowing what your situation is or having any medical information about it. I'm just purely speculating. What I would do is I'd play around with certain things and foods and stuff like that, and just take things out completely and go just to a steak, and then reintroduce things and see what happens, and try and work out what potential food, and then it may be compounds in that food. Then you can take that food out, bring another food in that's different but has certain compounds that are similar, and see, do I react the same way? To try and nail down what are the drivers is what we're trying to work out. Get back to me. I'm intrigued. Simon, Sarah from New Zealand, my daughter, came back with MTHFR. Yep, I've got one of those. Yep. Using MTHFR not detected. And heterozygous. I'm now in interaction with testing. This testing enough. Look, I've only used 23andMe to test my MTHFR. So that's how I used it. I'm not a specialist on knowing exactly all the different methods and the different companies what they use. So I can't advise you. I can only say that I use 23andMe, and that product provided me genetic testing for MTHFR and many other things. I do have a number of videos on MTHFR. Google my name in MTHFR and you'll get a comprehensive picture on that sort of stuff. So, because I've covered it a whole lot, biotin, B2 riboflavin corrects any MTHFR problem completely, and it's primarily animal foods. Like a glass of milk nearly gives you all your riboflavin. So if you have a steak and a glass of milk, you'll fix this pathway completely. You don't need folate or any of the other supplements. You don't need. You just need to eat these sort of foods sufficiently to basically support the methylation cycle. And you can use choline to spare the other methyl donors. And choline is pretty much quite a bit in eggs and meat in that regard. Anyway, You can try anything you like. Oh, you retracted it, didn't you? Remember, even if you retract it there, it does appear here. You just need to remember that, that it does appear in this part. So you can't retract anything really. Just letting you know. You just learned something about StreamYard, which is what I'm using. Yes, it doesn't actually, for whatever reason, detect the retractions, and so it doesn't tell me. So I don't know whether you retracted something. So if you put something inappropriate, bad luck. Look, look, I would basically try and play around and see what is actually with foods. I would probably, if I was you. Okay, fair enough. Look, for me, I would say one thing that I would do is look at the digestive videos that I've made. I've got one there just in case it's a pathogenic bacteria causing some of these issues. There's a Reuteri that can suppress a lot of these pathogenics, including C. diff, but many other pathogenic bacteria, and suppress them to a level. So you may have to do it for 6 months at a slightly higher dose, double what they recommend, in order to suppress sufficiently these, so they have a certain dosage on the pack. I can't remember it exactly, but I always say to people, double it. I know it's costly and it's annoying that it's costly. Now, Necro Kitty, I know what she did was she took it away and she used kefir and actually grew the damn stuff so she could actually grow more of it, so she wouldn't have to buy more of it. That's another way of doing it. So yeah, that's the way I would get around doing it, because you need to normalize this sort of situation, because you're reacting to too many things. Just trying. Yeah, fair enough. That's okay. You're welcome. Not a problem. Yeah, it's sort of improving. It's a bit averagey at the moment. Anyway, guys, I'm at the bottom of the chat. I don't know how I made it, but I did. I'm going to leave it here. It is 2 hours and 37 minutes and 43 seconds. So we've been going for a while. I'm going to take a bit of a break. I need to go and do some shopping because I didn't do enough shopping on the weekend. Unfortunately, I forgot. But yes, I need to go and get my yogurt as well, and a few other things. So, and then I've got, in about less than 5 hours, in 4 hours and 45 minutes, I've got another live stream, so which is the Eurasia one. So I hope that I will see some of you lovely people on that. But for the rest of you that need to go and get your sleep, well, enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night, stateside, and we will chat in a fortnight's time at the next live stream. You're welcome, and take care as well. Tango, thanks. Take care, and see us all. And do please hit the like button if you haven't, and do share some of my content around. It helps at least grow the channel, and hopefully, if I'm bigger, the lovely people at YouTube may get off my back. The word is may. See you, Scotty. See you all. Take care.